Once again, this is Dr. Phil Fernandes, the president of the Institute of Biblical Defense, the pastor of Trinity Bible Fellowship, and the director of the Doctor of Ministry and Apologetics program for Veritas International University. And today I want to complete our series on Old Testament prophecies fulfilled by Jesus' Old Testament prophecies, part 4. And what we're going to do is look at Isaiah 53, probably the most specific prophecies of Jesus' suffering and death and resurrection. I think Psalm 22 would also fall into that category. But I'm going to read from Isaiah 53, but I'm going to start in Isaiah 52. Isaiah 52, and starting at verse 13, it says, "See, my servant will act wisely. He will be raised and lifted up and highly exalted." And Isaiah, like many Jews of his day, liked to use words that could be taken in two ways. Jesus himself liked doing it. Jesus said, "If I be lifted up from the earth," it sounds like if I be exalted, "I will draw all men unto myself." But John said he was talking about the way in which he would die. So we think about being lifted up and exalted as being glorified, but Jesus also used it of his being crucified. How does Isaiah use it? Well, Isaiah says this, "He will be raised and lifted up and highly exalted." But then he says, "Just as there were many who were appalled at him, his appearance was so disfigured beyond that of any man, and his form marred beyond human likeness." So it's basically saying he's going to be exalted and lifted up, and when you look at him, you'd have to turn your head from him, because he's going to be so marred and so battered and so beaten that he's not even going to look like a human being. So this is talking about Jesus being lifted up on a cross. And then it says, verse 15 of Isaiah 52, "So he will sprinkle many nations, and kings will shut their mouths because of him. For what they were not told they will see, and what they have not heard they will understand." The language there of sprinkling many nations is the Jewish biblical language of the high priest sprinkling blood on the Ark of the Covenant on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. And so it's saying that he's going to be lifted up, and his image is going to be marred more than any man. He's going to be crucified, he's going to be slaughtered, but with his blood he's going to sprinkle many nations, and that many nations will be basically saved by the blood of the Lamb. But then Isaiah starts, Isaiah 53, a break that we put into the text that wasn't in the original. "Who has believed our message? And to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed?" In other words, yeah, this is what's going to happen, this is what I told you about, but who's even going to believe it? My own people, the Jewish people, are going to reject what I'm telling them, says Isaiah, the Jewish prophet. Okay? And he grew up, he talks about Messiah, he grew up before him like a tender shoot and like a root out of dry ground. It was a time when, in the history of the Jews, it was a time of poverty and spiritual barrenness. He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him, majesty, nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. It's not saying Jesus was ugly, it's just saying he looked like a regular guy. He didn't look like King Herod or King Solomon walking down the street. He had no majesty to attract us to him. Then he says he was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and familiar with suffering. Like one from whom men hide their faces, he was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely he took up our infirmities and carried our sorrows, yet we considered him stricken by God, smitten by him, and afflicted. We acted like, wow, this guy is cursed of God, because cursed is any man who hangs on a tree, the Old Testament says. And here Jesus was crucified, naked on a tree, nailed naked to a tree. Not only the most painful way to die, but the most shameful way to die as well. He was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him, and by his wounds we are healed. So he's going to die for our sins. We all like sheep have gone astray. Each of us has turned to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him, on the Messiah, the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. He was led like a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before her shearers is silent, so he did not open his mouth. By oppression and judgment he was taken away, and who can speak of his descendants? For he was cut off from the land of the living. He was killed. For the transgression of my people he was stricken. He died, and he died for our sins. He was assigned a grave with the wicked. In other words, he died as a criminal, and with the rich in his death. He was laid in a rich man's tomb. Though he had done no violence, nor was any deceit in his mouth. He was falsely accused. Yet it was the Lord's will to crush him and cause him to suffer. And though the Lord made his life a guilt offering, he will see his offspring and prolong his days. And the will of the Lord will prosper in his hand. How did God prolong the days of the Messiah? He did so by raising him from the dead. After the suffering of his soul, he will see the light of life and be satisfied. He's going to be raised from the dead. By his knowledge, my righteous servant will justify many, and he will bear their iniquities. He'll die for their sins. Therefore, I will give him a portion among the great. Jesus of Nazareth is like, even the World Book Encyclopedia says he was probably the greatest man who ever lived. And he will divide the spoils with the strong, because he poured out his life unto death and was numbered with the transgressors. For he bore the sin of many and made intercession for the transgressors. He said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. But when you look at this prophecy and you go through it, it's talking about Jesus of Nazareth. I remember growing up Roman Catholic, on Good Friday we would read this passage, and nobody told me it was in the Old Testament. I just assumed it was an eyewitness account of Jesus' death on the cross. When the Christian Broadcasting Network took their most obnoxious reporter and read this passage to Jews who were walking on the streets of Jerusalem, he asked them, who's it about? They said, well, that's a no-brainer. It's about Jesus. And then he told them, well, this is in your Old Testament. It's your prophet Isaiah predicting the coming of the Messiah. And then they said, okay, well, then it's not about Jesus. Well, you know what? It is about Jesus, and it was written 700 years before he walked the earth. Jesus is the long-awaited, the long-prophesied Jewish Messiah, and the Bible teaches that he's coming back. The next few lectures, we'll look at signs of the second coming, signs that point to the second coming of Jesus Christ to the planet Earth. Please subscribe to the Phil Fernandes Show. Visit us at Phil Fernandes, that's Fernandes with an S, philfernandes.com, or instituteofbiblicaldefense.com. But subscribe to the Phil Fernandes Show. Thank you, and God bless you.